I'm here today to discuss the Barbour ABI CPA Regional Hotspots in UK Construction report, and I've got Rebecca Larkin, an economist from the CPA, to discuss the findings of this report. Rebecca, what I saw from this year's report was obviously at a headline level 2016 wasn't as strong a year as 2015 in terms of the value of contracts that have been awarded. Still strong, but not as strong. So how did that play out at a regional level within the report?
We saw some continued hotspots throughout the regions of the UK, and that was across residential, commercial and infrastructure. However, with regards to residential, there were some cold spots, and that was particularly noticeable in regions in the South East and Yorkshire and Humber, where a third of local authority regions registered as cold spots, where contract awards in 2016 were below the long-term average. And I think that's representative of 2015 being a really good year for residential contracts. We're now seeing that play through into high levels of output, actual building work on the ground in the residential sector.
Okay, I mean that's an interesting point. Certainly residential's been the driver of growth within the industry, both at contract level and output level. I mean, another thing that I looked at, or I took from the report, was actually a bit of a shift in the geographical locations of contracts that have been awarded out into Birmingham, Manchester. So, you know, I wonder what your view was on that sort of shift in the location of output.
Yeah, we can definitely see that in the report. Birmingham in particular was the only broad hotspot where we had hotspots in all three residential, commercial and infrastructure sectors, which shows that the city centre redevelopment that's occurring in the city. And it also shows interlinkages between the three sectors. So infrastructure, for example, can enable demand for housing and commercial offices. Manchester was also another hotspot, particularly in infrastructure. So we are seeing the spread away from the typical engines of growth of London and the South East out towards the regions.
Well, that's interesting you say that about Birmingham and Manchester, because of course they've just recently voted in metro mayors, and the idea is that they'll have more power and more autonomy to spend, particularly you would imagine on construction. So it will be interesting to see whether those patterns of growth outside of London and in the more regional cities continues into this year. Now, moving on just to talk a little bit more about infrastructure. Obviously, it's constantly in the news about the need to invest in infrastructure. Again, it was a strong year for infrastructure, but what were the sort of patterns in terms of the types of projects that we saw regionally in 2016?
Well, like last year, infrastructure was a key driver of hotspots, again, throughout the UK. We've got some small projects with short lead times in the North East, particularly in energy. We've also got the larger, more headline-grabbing projects such as HS2, M4 redevelopment in the South East, all of which have longer lead times and require more certainty. But we are starting to see the early stages of contract awards for those projects being awarded.
And it's interesting again that you mention HS2. Obviously a large-scale infrastructure project requires political buy-in. There are other major infrastructure projects that have been suggested or mooted potentially in the pipeline, such as the third runway at Heathrow. What's your take on the current political situation in terms of the minority government and the implications that might have for infrastructure in the UK in the next few years?
We see a lot of uncertainty, particularly due to Brexit and the hung parliament. So what we would ask for is certainty that we will see continuation and political will to see through these projects. We've seen the early stages of early contracts awarded for projects such as Wilfer, Hinkley Point C, both nuclear power stations, and HS2, which are large projects which will drive construction growth, infrastructure growth, and we would need to see the certainty that the new government will see these projects through.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that transpires. So thanks very much for coming in, Rebecca, to discuss this report. Much appreciated.